I don't have to shout anymore. Okay, so yeah, my name's Joe Sparrow from Music Ally. So we're going to be talking about why spatial audio is being used, why you're hearing about it so widely at the moment, how artists can use it, how it can be integrated into new ways of getting music to people and getting used by fans and artists, and even how you can take old music and make new interesting mixes of it with Dolby Atmos. So we have an expert panel here. If you do have questions for them, please do submit them by the online Most Wanted Music platform, and we will get them to them at the end of this panel. So let's introduce our speakers. Can you give us a quick 30 seconds overview of who you are? Let's start at the far end. Bettina Engelmann, Senior Music Editor and Label Relations Manager at Tidal. Hi.
Hi, welcome everyone.
And what do you do? What's your job?
I'm based in Berlin and I curate for GSA, for Germany, Switzerland and Austria. I talk to labels, plan campaigns, and overview like the German Dolby Atmos efforts.
Great. So you have a good overview of what's happening in Germany with artists and streaming.
Yeah.
Of course, Tidal were one of the earliest platforms to integrate Dolby Atmos,
yes.
And so we'll be hearing about it from their perspective. Next, we have Ralph Coleman, Director of Mobility and IAM Management. Hi, Ralph. What do you do, briefly?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm running a music label, Mobility Records. I'm managing artists, and it's like so when I got in touch with Dolby Atmos, I thought this can be the next thing to jump at.
Yeah, great. So we'll talk about those opportunities for labels and artists from his perspective. Eric Horstmann, CEO of Immersive Lab. What is it you do?
Thanks for having me as well. I run Immersive Lab. We are a music production company specifically for immersive audio and Dolby Atmos, and we have mixed more than 200 titles so far. So we've been around for a couple of years now, and
so a highly experienced Dolby Atmos mixer here. So we'll have that perspective as well. And finally, last but not least, of course, Aurélie Hayon, Senior Marketing Manager at Dolby. Hi.
Hello.
And what is it you do in relation to Atmos?
Thanks first. Thank you for having me here. I basically look after everything to do with marketing and PR for France, and I've been highly implicated in the rollout of Dolby Atmos music for Europe, and specifically trying to evangelize the technology amongst B2B public in the first place.
Great. So we have the full story here from Dolby all the way through to streaming platforms and everyone in between. So again, if you've got any questions about any part of that chain, do let us know. So let's start in the sense of, Dolby Atmos is this advanced form of surround sound. You will have heard it for a long time in cinemas, but it's now available on many streaming platforms, and so you can listen to your favorite music using it as well. And obviously Tidal was one of the very early adopters of it. And you can, if you go to these platforms, you can listen to classic albums like the Beatles, for instance. Let It Be was recently mixed in Atmos, and modern music as well, using this new audio technology. Now, the first question is, and I'm going to come to you with this, Aurélie, what does it sound like? Which I know is a really difficult question to describe a sonic technology in words, but I'm going to leave that with you.
So Dolby Atmos basically is an innovative audio technology that envelopes you in an immersive soundscape. In other words, you as a listener, you are center stage. You hear and you feel music all around you. So the technology was created originally for the cinema back in 2014. And the difference between Atmos mix and stereo mix, not going into too technical details, is just with the stereo mix, you will be limited to two channels, the right and the left. Whereas when you mix a music mix in Dolby Atmos, will be completely freed from this channels consideration, and you'll be able to place audio elements all around the people's head. So artists will get more freedom to move those audio elements in a three-dimensional space around the listeners, and play with the volume or play with the size of them, basically.
One way I heard it described was that you can imagine the different sounds as audio objects that are three-dimensional and sort of in space around you. Eric, you have mixed 200 projects with Atmos. how do you describe it when you're saying to someone, hey, you should really mix this in Atmos because
how much time do we have?
we have 29 minutes left. Yeah.
Don't want to explode the time. I think the biggest challenge basically is first to kind of educate people about what it is and what it sounds like. And so the earlier we can get into the process, talking to producers and artists, the better it is. Because most of the projects are in a late stage where they then think about, oh, maybe we should do some Atmos mix, and haven't considered the Dolby Atmos environment into the production of the song itself. So that is a crucial thing where we try to get in touch as early as possible. Sometimes just not possible because last minute, Tidal, Apple, Amazon is asking, we need Atmos. So then you have 2 weeks to get an album finished by a finished mix, basically. It's a pretty long process, but the basic idea is to get the listener right into the song as much as possible and as considered as possible.
So from a listener's perspective, you're able to appreciate the song in a different way because it sort of feels different. It feels multidimensional.
It can, if you want to. If the creative intention is laid out to be that, it can. I have experienced a lot of projects where people were kind of very conservative and have their stereo mix in mind all the time and want to sound it a little bit, or like stereo, just a little bigger, like extended stereo. Whereas other projects that we did together, basically we could go like totally crazy and use the whole 3D space as we think it's worth it. Yeah. For the genre. It depends also on the genre.
Of course, and perhaps we'll talk a little bit about the differences in genre later. I'm particularly interested in the difference between classical implementations and dance music, for instance. One thing I must say is that tomorrow there's a satellite event for Most Wanted Music where you can actually go and try Dolby Atmos if you have not done it yet. So if you check the app, I think it's tomorrow afternoon or evening, and you can actually go and put some headphones on and experience it for yourselves. Ralph, you work at label level and with artists, and so when you are planning projects with artists and saying, hey, we should mix this in Dolby Atmos, what is it you're trying to achieve? Like what do the artists want, and what do you want from a label perspective?
Yeah, so when I discovered Dolby Atmos or immersive sounds for the first time, I thought, wow, that's a chance to innovate the streaming market. Because from the label perspective or rights holder perspective and also artist perspective, we kind of got stuck in the last 10 years. So CDs are disappearing, downloads disappeared. So we kind of like were forced to make our revenues in streaming or through streaming. And but the revenues through streaming are like quite limited, and we were also kind of like forced to accept a specific monetization. So plus the very, very low sound quality that people consume through their headphones. They pay €300 for headphones, but they are not paying €9.99 for a subscription for a fair share for artists, but also to just experience music in a decent quality. So these were the things that I was thinking about the past years, and Dolby Atmos actually like gives us the chance to establish a new format, a new sound experience, and there is like a new competition in the streaming market that I really like to see, and hopefully motivates more consumers, listeners, fans to maybe subscribe to a platform that really delivers a high quality, because it's not only Dolby Atmos or immersive sounds that are available, it's also lossless music that we can now stream. And so this is one very important aspect for me from the label side. And for the artists, it opens new doors creatively. And it's definitely a learning process for everybody. And we jumped on this like half a year ago, even before Apple announced to use it. And it was only Tidal and Amazon at that time who supported this format, and we just wanted to make our experiences with it. And so now we are happy that this is like brought on a higher level, and let's see what the future brings.
Yeah, so it's not just about bringing a new sort of audio experience. It's actually opening up new business opportunities in terms of helping the listener consume music in different ways, which brings us nicely to Tidal. So Bettina, you were one of the first platforms to adopt this technology. I guess the simple question is why, but what do you think that the listeners get out of it that they really like about Atmos mixed music?
Yeah, as you said, we've always been one of the first services to adapt new sounds. We had Tidal Hi-Fi, we had MQA, we have Sony 360 and Dolby Atmos. We're always trying to give the listener the best sound experience possible. And Dolby Atmos, as you mentioned, is a whole new dimension of listening. We have people who subscribe to Tidal Hi-Fi have really good sound systems. They like to experience every note and every nuance of the sound. And Dolby Atmos gives them a whole new experience of space and sound. So of course that's for us it's really important to educate people about the format, try it out, and see how great it is.
And what has the response been from the Tidal users? What do they tell you that they like about it?
I mean, most people listen to it on headphones for now, while the best experience is, of course, through Apple TV, LG TV, and Android TV, and a bigger audio system. But many people listen to it through it on headphones, and they're still very satisfied with it. We get really great response. And I just checked a bit of the stats of listening, and we went from like 3 just albums, tracks, and playlists. Now we have a whole Dolby page with new arrivals, staff picks, different genres, like old albums being mixed in Atmos now, decades playlist, and all of them are very popular, and especially in Germany. We're only on Android and TVs right now, and the Dolby Atmos new arrivals is on 36 of all playlists, of all editorial playlists. Right. So this, for me, it's like there's not many people can experience it right now, but there's still a very high demand for Dolby Atmos.
Yeah, so people are choosing it as an experience over others. Well, let's talk about it then in terms of, we've sort of got an overview from each section there. Let's think about it in terms of opportunities that Dolby Atmos brings. From your perspective, Aurelie, at Dolby, what are you hoping, apart from it being adopted widely and people enjoying it, like what do you see the future being in terms of artists taking this technology and doing something with it? What's your hope in terms of the bigger picture?
The hope is that artists see it for what it is just additional tools to unleash their creativity. So as Eric mentioned just earlier, it's all about what you do with it. You can decide to push it at the max. You can decide to keep it kind of tamed. It's just served an artistic intent. So for us, we gave them tools to unleash their creativity and also connect more with their audience in that way. Dolby organized a customer study. I think it was last year, over 1,000 respondents took part of it. And what came out of it is roughly 75% of respondents indicated that they felt Dolby Atmos would bring them closer to the song they were listening to or the artist they love.
Right, so it's something that artists are sort of thinking, this could be a great tool to help express myself in an interesting way. Is it... perhaps we can talk to you about this as well, Eric, but is it therefore a new skill for them to learn in the sort of production sense, or is it more about the way of thinking about it conceptually?
I think we had multiple. Well, I was fortunate enough to talk to a local artist, and Rodriguez Jr. was one of them. And what they thought and what they express is just give them opportunity to create in a different way. So some decided and said out loud, I will sync my music in a different way for my next album. I will think about it with specialization in mind. And it just depends how keen they are to integrate it early on in the process. But if you ask me now how I think I hope to see Atmos in the future, I think it's really an amazing tool and a win-win for both artists who got this extra creativity kick, and also for listeners, because the idea is all about having heightened emotion, being able to make them feel more and get them drowned into the music they're listening, and get them actually closer to what they like, which is the artist.
Yeah, thanks. And talking of win-win, Eric, obviously you must be getting a lot of work at the moment as people are trying to work with you, I guess. How does that work? I mean, so let's say you're working with Ralph, for instance, and an artist who is currently recording and releasing music says, okay, I've now got these songs and I want to release them as Atmos mixes. How does that process work? Does it work at the creation stage, or is it a case of they make the music and then they become mixed, or is it both?
Can be both. The majority of cases is that I get contacted when the creative stage has mainly finished, when it comes to kind of mixing, finishing the project, and then going into delivery. That was also the case with Rodriguez Jr. that we saw, for instance. But then we try to... okay, that was a special project because it has been released in stereo half a year ago. So then we could kind of go all in on the Atmos version because we were not thinking about the stereo anymore. But when there is a release that will be released in stereo and in Dolby Atmos along, that's going to be that's a different topic. I usually get in touch with the producers, sometimes with the artists, but not very often with the artists, to be honest. Mainly the producers and the labels, who then kind of push the format a little bit when the production has been ready. And then we talk about how to deliver the sound elements into my studio so I can finish the mix then in Atmos, basically. Always keeping the creative intention of the original stereo mix kind of intact. So I'm not touching this at all, unless it's wanted. But this is something you have to decide with the producers, because you could do it. But sometimes actually you could also talk to the producer itself or to the musician, and then with more education on their side, so knowing more about the format, what it can do, this information can go back into the creative process, and songs can be actually recomposed, rewritten, or produced specifically for that format by adding elements that you would not use in stereo, etc., etc. So it is.
Yes, and again, I guess as this format becomes more widely adopted, people will understand it better, and it'll feed in. Ralph, this is something you deal with all the time with artists. How does that process work from your end? Are you encouraging artists to turn things into Atmos, or are they coming to you and saying, "I want to do Atmos"? Or is it how do you communicate from the artists to someone like Eric how to get that mix right?
Depends on the project, depends on the music. So what's happening right now is that, let's say, major record industry, they're like they're transforming like back catalog to Dolby Atmos, from, I don't know, classics, Marvin Gaye to whatever, pop music, R&B, and so on. Electronic music, especially, in my opinion, is made for this new format, because we are working with artificial sounds, and artificial sounds can be, let's say, moved around without irritating too much, like an acoustic guitar or like any other acoustic instrument stays where it belongs to during the whole duration of the song. So so Dolby Atmos productions or Dolby Atmos mixes are, let's say, expensive. It's an extra investment from label side. So we always need to kind of like think about, is it worth to release this project, this album in Dolby Atmos? At the moment, this for us is all like, let's say, a learning process. We want to be part of it. We want to learn. And so when we approach the artists, if they are interested in doing this with us, we experience different, let's say, reactions. Some, they just head it over and say, yeah, let's do it, you're the professionals. Others have a very specific and clear idea what they want. And some expect a roller coaster of sounds moving around all the time. Others want to keep it like conservative, very close to their original stereo mixes, just having the room, the space, the transparency, the clear and crisp vocals in their Dolby Atmos mix. So I think this is something that we all need to figure out still and learn. The artists also need to learn how to use this new technology and format. And so what I'm saying right now is like we are now kind of like transforming existing stereo mixes into Dolby Atmos most of the time. Maybe in the future, artists have the Dolby Atmos format in mind when they start producing a track. So this can have a new creative impact on music production in the future.
And I guess that is the sort of the bigger picture, the long term, that people will producers at the moment think in stereo, because that's the sort of what the technology from start to end, from the screen in front of them to your speakers at home or in your ears dictate. But we have these other options where you can.
And also the consumer needs to learn how to consume it and to experience it. So we just talked about like the hi-fi connoisseurs who have like a Dolby Atmos or like a Dolby Cinema setup at home, and why I'm supporting this format right now is because we can now experience this format through our headphones. Yeah, it's like a binaural export. Maybe that's something where you can talk about a little bit more. So what that means. So now we can experience this new music format through our headphones that makes it accessible for everybody. There's a little compromise, but that's the new thing.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. Well, maybe we'll just quickly talk to you about from the fan perspective, and then we'll talk about that, which is, there's something interesting you were saying there, or both of you, well, you've all said really, which is there's two really forms of music here in terms of there's ones that have Dolby Atmos built in from the start, and then there's when you turn existing stereo mixes into Dolby Atmos. But you were saying, Ralph, as well, that you feel that, let's say, electronic music works really well because of our expectations as an audience, and they want things moving around and wild. You know, what have you found in terms of popularity from the music that you have on Tidal? In terms of, do people want to hear electronic new music, or do they want to hear music they know and to hear what it sounds like now?
I would say both. That's why we have like special modules for catalog as well, like classic albums. Also classical music, of course, is very is made for this as well. I would say both. But what I see now, especially from majors, Universal is very active. They're doing everything. It's mainstream pop is now in Dolby. So as Ralph said, it's expensive. So Helene Fischer will get the mix, but not every Berlin techno DJ can afford the extra money to mix their album. So
the answer is that the Berlin techno DJs need to collaborate with Helene Fischer. Finally, we got the two of them united for a Dolby Atmos mix. And so, you know, there is this ability to experience music beyond stereo. The classical Atmos experience, I guess, is very different to the electronic music version. So in terms of then interpreting that as a listener, there are technologies that are available to the customer that enable this. Aurelie, what in terms of this is integrated into headphones, you don't need to have full integration with Atmos to experience it, but there are some options there, aren't there?
So yeah, to go back to what was said previously, I think one of the strengths of the format is the ability to scale and offer a listener kind of a consistent experience throughout multiple devices. I think now in Europe we have, I would say hundreds of millions of Dolby Atmos compatible devices. So it will range from smart speakers to soundbars, home theaters, and TVs, for instance. But you also have the binaural experience, which is the key because the majority of people listen to the music on their headphones. So basically you can connect a $10 pair of headphones or an expensive one and just get this kind of binaural experience. So I'm not going to too technical details, and I'm sure those gentlemen will do it way more than I can, but it's basically binaural is tricking the brain in offering a kind of spatialization.
but I mean, so I'll leave someone else to talk about the technicalities, maybe Eric. But in terms of that sort of, if you like, that pipeline of delivery from Dolby, you're providing the technologies and experience all the way through, I guess, from inception of the technology itself through to supporting people to become Atmos mixers, to then getting the technologies put at the end for the consumer as well. That's a big task, right?
I think that's the only way it can work, because we've seen it. We've been in the audiovisual business for a while, and to me, it looks very similar to what we try to build as an ecosystem for lots of other verticals, which are movies and TVs at home or cinema. You need always to have the production ready, so the pipeline of content, the platform to deliver, and also the devices to experience. Otherwise, there is a missing link, and it doesn't work.
Yeah. Okay. So that has been rolled out successfully. We've seen it going all the way through the chain here. Eric, let's talk about the technological part then, which is what you can wear headphones. You can listen to Dolby Atmos through fairly normal headphones and experience something different. But there's also the possibility to, and this is where it gets really immersive, is that it reacts to your movement, or your head movement. Of you can listen to this over here in a sense, or am I explaining that badly?
So you're talking a little bit about head tracking.
Yes.
In this particular case, head tracking is a technology that allows you to actually keep the soundstage intact while moving your head, so the element will not move. In my experience is that head tracking and music is not the best combination.
Yeah.
Let me put it that way. It's great for audiovisual content, like a Netflix show or an Amazon show or something, when it's like when you have a visual picture going along. Then head tracking is a nice addition. But to Dolby Atmos music itself, head tracking is something I would stay away from.
Yeah.
But from a technology point of view, what I wanted to add is that the good thing about Dolby Atmos is you create one mix in Dolby Atmos, and it translates from a speaker setup to a soundbar setup to the headphone use case. So there's not like the case where you have to do 3 different mixes per delivery format or per use case or something. So that is something that is helpful. But as she said already, as the headphone use case is probably the most important one for Dolby Atmos these days in music, because that's what people always have with them. And you can use any headphone, no particular.
So one quick question for you as a specialist in the mixing level. If you're given an existing, let's say, catalog, a lot of over 50% of music listening on streaming platforms or something like that, you know that the exact figure probably is from older music, which are over a couple of years old going back. If you're presented with a stereo mix from a long time ago where this technology did not exist, it's still possible to take that and to turn it into an Atmos mix, or is it more complicated?
It depends. So what we usually then do is we ask if there are kind of stems available of that particular track. So is there a multi-track recording? Do we have individual elements like drums, bass, pianos, vocals separate from each other? Because with the final stereo mix, it is possible to turn this into Dolby Atmos, but I would not recommend this, because that's an upmix process that it's not. There's no benefit in this. It doesn't give you any kind of benefit in Dolby Atmos. So going one stage back, look, are there kind of individual elements of this particular tracks available in either multi-track or already pre-mixed stem something? And with these elements, we can then work and create a Dolby Atmos mix.
So as many tracks as possible going backwards is better, yeah. Thank you. Ralph, maybe I can address this to both of you in terms of the business opportunities. You mentioned this right at the beginning, and I think this is really interesting. So many developments in the music industry musically and in the industry itself have been driven by technological innovation. That's always the case, and that's why we're talking about Atmos so much at the moment, because it's a huge change from stereo, which we've been listening to for so long. So when you think about it from a business perspective, you're now releasing music, which is people are consuming by a physical product, perhaps, maybe CD vinyl, I don't know, but they're also consuming by standard stereo and Atmos. Is there an upsell in that from that you sort of, we're looking at multiple release formats, we're looking at different ways for customers to engage, different ways to purchase, different ways to engage with their streaming platform. So what's the relationship like between you and, let's say, a streaming platform Tidal, for instance, when you're looking for ways to take music and present it to audiences in new ways that are good for your business and good for your business as well?
I mean, as I said, for us it's important to always provide the best listening experience possible. So we explore all formats and all quality options, and of course we wanna. That's how you keep your listeners happy, to give the best experience.
Yeah, and so then, Ralph, how do you've got this all the great technology here and the great opportunities at the end? How do you take advantage of that?
So at the moment, it's an investment from our side. It's an investment in the future. I think what we maybe missed is the discussion about pricing.
Right.
Because I think what we learned today is you need to put some effort in it, and there's some costs involved, like external mixing advice, engineers, and so on. So, of course, we are hoping that this Dolby Atmos streaming formats are hopefully also reflecting in like higher revenue shares in the future. Let's see if we can still have this discussion. But there are also
where will that come from? Will that come from the fans wanting to pay more for these enhanced experiences, do you think? Or
well, it would be fair to have that, because it's an extra investment to the usual stereo format. Yeah, let's see how this reflects in royalty statements in the future. But there are also other opportunities I see, and it's the live segment maybe at one point. Immersive sound experiences live on stage. I think maybe in the future we're also going to see some kind of immersive sound or Dolby Atmos in clubs.
Yeah.
Streaming music. The new DJ technologies are offering let's say access to clouds, to Tidal, to Beatport maybe in the future. Let's see. And the more catalog is available, the more this is also attractive for DJs to play out this music, and maybe clubs to embed this technology as well. It's a long way to get there, but that's my hope for the future, that this is all happening.
Yeah, and I guess one exciting way of thinking about it is you could take a live album and really get perhaps a live recording of an event, and really get you could do something exciting with that, right? In terms of recreating that. A live experience is much more dynamic and interesting. Is that something which you've been approached to do? Anything like that yet?
Yeah, I mean, live recorded thing is that's actually nothing new, because there's a lot of Blu-ray deliveries of a live concert of, I don't know what, Rolling Stones or whoever. I mean, can name hundreds of them, and all of those mixes have been mixed in Dolby Atmos as well. And, that's actually a pretty standard task.
Right. Okay. Good. Well, then he's available, folks. That's good. So we've got just over a minute left. If you have any questions, we will address them in just after that time. Finally, then we've got about 20 seconds each, which is good. So, looking forward, Aurélie, from Dolby's perspective, what is your in 20 seconds? What is your sort of hope in terms of how the technology will have an effect on music, whether that's fans, artists? What's your big hope?
Big hope is the format gets adopted widely by a growing number of platforms, of artists, and customer are just put at the center stage and get to have the full package, which is heightened emotions and closer linked to the music they love, and rediscover also tracks that they will rediscover tracks that they not have heard before, not correctly, but they will rediscover it in a new way.
Great, thank you. And I'll Eric, your job is to get the most out of the music in that sense. What are your brief hopes for the future as you look forward with Atmos?
I think the biggest thing is to educate people about the creative possibilities of this format, and then that's so that the artists can embrace this format into their writing process, into their production process.
Great. Yeah, great, thanks. And Ralph, same question. What are you hoping for?
I really hope that we keep a specific quality standard for Dolby Atmos mixes and content. So I'm afraid that let's say the market is going to be flooded with like low quality that maybe disappoints the consumers. It's like a crucial moment right now to show music fans what this music format can do.
Great, thank you. And last but by no means least, Bettina, from Tidal's perspective, what's your hope?
I hope it's going to be more accessible to more artists while keeping the quality high, and of course that more people can experience it.
Great, thank you. Well, that's it. We may have some questions now, so
Yeah,
I'm welcoming you back to the stage. Hi,
Yeah.
round of applause, please.
First of all, thank you very much for this valuable input. We have one question. It's addressed to Eric. And the question is, how does the loudness war apply to Dolby Atmos? Minus 18 dB is a requirement. However, mixing maintained that loudness sound a lot more quiet than major releases. What's the mystery behind that?
I didn't understand you completely, but I just heard loudness war and minus 18, and then I can talk about this.
What's the mystery behind that?
So there is, I mean, within the Dolby Atmos music standard, basically, that has been defined by Dolby, Universal Music, Warner, the big players. The target loudness of a Dolby Atmos music mix is mixed to a specific value, which is minus 18 dB LUFS. And all the mixers shall be in a specific loudness range of plus minus 2 LUFS. That gives like an overall loudness similarity throughout all genres and mixes. I mean, I don't know if people are kind of cranking up again, like we have it in stereo with this loudness war. But as far as I see it and as far as I do it myself, I follow those guidelines pretty strictly because I'm a big fan of dynamic and dynamic music. This is quality in my opinion. So I think we should all work together on this to keep this and to follow these guidelines as often as possible and as good as possible.
All right. Thank you very much.